See, I think one of the things that the conservative types do wrong with regards to responsibility is that they conceptualize it too rigidly in terms of duty and should. And that's true, but it's also a mistake, because what I've been suggesting to people is that, no, you don't understand, is that all the meaning in your life is going to come as a consequence of accepting responsibility. It's not merely a matter of duty, it's that you need this sustaining meaning, because otherwise you suffer stupidly, and you get bitter, and you get resentful, and you get cruel, and you get homicidal, and you get genocidal. That's the whole pathway. And so that's a catastrophe, that's hell. And so if you don't have something meaningful to pursue, to set against that, that's the degeneration of nihilism. Okay, so where do you find the response? Where do you find the meaning? Say, well, you look at people that you admire, and almost all the people you admire are people who take on a heavy burden of responsibility. And if the responsibility is associated with the value hierarchy, so you're trying to pursue something of ultimate value, so that's the responsibility, that gives you meaning. And so you can talk to people about taking responsibility for their inadequacy if you point out to them that who they could be is much better than who they are, so that there's a trajectory, and so that the idea of taking on responsibility even for their own inadequacies and errors is all of a sudden associated with hope and not with only condemnation. And that works. And that, like, when I lay out that line of argument in the lectures, and Dave's seen this multiple times, it's always the case that the lecture halls go silent.
Yeah.
So people are absolutely riveted on that idea.
And it was interesting. I did an interview with Tucker Carlson, who I know is in here with you also. And one of the things that we talked about was, what people should do in dying towns. They're in areas where the industry has left. What should they do? They're experiencing difficulty. And I was saying that telling people that the jobs are coming back falsely is not going to actually do anything for them. That the only thing that you're guaranteed in America or in a free country is the adventure, right? That's what you're guaranteed. And that's also what makes life meaningful, is that sense of adventure. That's what America was built on, right? That's the fundamental command, the very first command that Abraham has ever given, is get up, leave the land of your fathers where you're comfortable, and go someplace where I'm not even going to tell you where you're going. You're just going to go there, and then when you get there, maybe you'll know, right? But I think that one of the areas, Jordan, where you and I think it would be interesting to drill down, is when it comes to directing toward the purpose. How do we define what the purpose is? Because I think one of the things that's been difficult in the West, at least since the death of the Judeo-Christian value system in many ways, or at least the sort of, we're running on the fumes of the Judeo-Christian value system is the truth. But since the decline of the importance in many people's minds of that value system, the decline of biblical living, has been this idea you can create your own meaning. Right? You just, that if you find something that you truly care about, and then you pursue that thing that you truly care about, this will bring you happiness. And that may be true for a certain number of people, but the vast majority of people are incredibly crappy at coming up with their own meanings. There has to be something that is out there that is discoverable in order for it to be discovered.
I think that's what the psychoanalysts, that's why I like Jung so much, because that's what made him such an astute critic of Nietzsche. Because Nietzsche believed we had to create our own values. But the psychoanalysts, starting with Freud, started to note that the values were actually built in. And Freud saw that, first of all, in dreams. Right, and then Jung took that apart and associated the dreams with the myths and said, no, you don't understand, is that the values are built in. You don't create them, you can rediscover them. And that's the resurrection of the father from the belly of the beast.
This does raise a question as to, and you and I have discussed this before, is where exactly that moral system comes from. So Kant obviously talks about the idea that he believes in God because of the starry sky above and the moral law within. You can discover all this within. I am not convinced that human beings can actually discover meaning within, because if that were true, then the prosperity and liberalism and human rights and value for individuals and all the things that we associate with the good stuff in the West, that would have been universal. And it is not, in fact, universal. It arose at a certain time in a particular place associated with a particular value system. This is why when people ask me about why I think that revelation is necessary, why it's important, it's because I think that without you're going to have to make these fundamental assumptions. To get from point A to point B, you're going to have to make fundamental assumptions at point A. Now, you can either get that from revelation, or you can just assume it, and then try to explain where those assumptions came from, or you can just pretend those assumptions don't exist, which is, I think, actually what Sam sort of does. And I hate to criticize Sam in his absence, but I think that Sam sort of just assumes that when he says things like, we're here for the greater flourishing of human beings, you actually have to define every one of those terms. There are a bunch of assumptions baked into what all of that means that he's making, and I'm not sure that Sam will acknowledge he's making them. But that's why, to me, and this is sort of the thesis of my book next year, the West is built on the the basic revelations of Jerusalem, meaning human beings are made in God's image with individual value and with individual purpose, and with a collective purpose where we get together and we pursue living in a more virtuous way. And that's one pole. And the other pole is the reason of Greece, where we have the capacity to look at the world around us and draw conclusions from that world. And on those poles are built all of modern science, are built all of economics, are built the free speech and free lives that we live right now. And I think that we have been gradually, over the last 200 years, chipping away at both of those poles, Jerusalem in terms of revelation and Athens in terms of reason, which we've abandoned for postmodernism, and that's just deprived us of purpose.
So